Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Therapy by the Book. My name is William Haddad.
I'm Daniel Villanueva.
And this is the show where we take your favorite fictional characters and ask the question, what would it be like if they came to therapy? And boy, Daniel, where do we begin with this one? Walter White from Breaking Bad. Whew.
Oh my God, what an incredibly dynamic character. Like, he's amazing. My daughter actually got into a writing program for Yale, and she did a summer class, and the professor that was running it used Walter White, the character, as a perfect explanation of how to write a character, of how to write depth, how to write story arch, how to write background, and just everything having to do with characters. She said that was one of the best written characters that she can think of. So I mean, if Yale's using it, I'm guessing it's pretty great.
I mean, not that I would ever argue with Yale and expect to to survive the repercussions, but you know, I don't have an argument to make. I couldn't agree more. Walter White. I mean, the show is as popular as it is for good reason. He's an extraordinarily written character with so many layers of complexity. And the thing I noticed as I dove in for this episode too is it's not just layers. Those layers aren't just fixed. They're constantly shifting and then reshaping, reforming, and sometimes even changing back, doing like almost a 360 and at other times a 180 over the course of the 5 seasons of the show. It's incredible.
Well, it felt to me like he was trying to understand his own identity, which he's struggled with his whole life, right? All the insecurities, all the, well, I'm going to just call them betrayals, because they were betrayals. So, some of them in his own head and of his own fault, because he didn't step up and take charge of situations. But that went with his trauma, right? Really very avoidant, very disconnected and disassociative. But because of that, you can see how he fluctuates between needing control, needing to be have this sense of dignity, of power, of anything that makes him feel stabilized. And that's why I saw so much fluctuation within the character, which is amazing. I mean, we can't use just the writer. The actor himself did an incredible job at trying to understand who this character was, and how this character must feel in the world that he's plummeting himself in. Mind you, that all happened within a couple. I think it was like 2 years. I mean, that's crazy what happened within that time span. Insane to me.
It is. Yeah, looking back on the show as a whole, you know, 5 seasons, it's not as long as some shows, but it's a good length of time. And it was, and the show aired, you know, over a period of a good length of time. It's one of those rare instances where less time passes, I think, in the total runtime in the story of the show than the runtime of the show itself in the real world for the audience, which is really trippy when you think about it.
Right. Well, that's not a good comparison, but at the time, well, I'm going to run with it anyways. It reminded me of that show 24, right? Every episode was a day.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Because it just didn't match. At some point, I felt like they had been doing this for, I don't know, 15 years, and he made a statement. I don't remember if they were in a diner or whatever, and it's been a rough year or something. I said, what the heck? How does it's only been a year? Are you kidding me? But yeah, that goes to show how deeply they pull you into their world, and how engulfed you are into it. And yeah, just an incredible show. And then, the breakups were okay. El Camino was okay. But at least I got to see what the heck happened to him.
Right. I sort of view El Camino not as its own thing, but as like a supplementary series finale. Felina is Walter's finale. El Camino is Jesse's finale for the series,
for sure.
respectively.
It felt like a period at the end of a sentence, man. It helped me finish off to see, because my brain always that's our style, right? We're therapists. We're like, wait, so what happened there? I need to know what
Exactly.
happened. I need to know how he went through that. Because of course they were going to know he was there, or somebody was there. Of course they were going to be looking for him. Of course there was going to be. So I'm glad we got that. And then Better Call Saul. That was an interesting spinoff as well. Um, but I guess we'll save that for another time because we'll end up talking about him. But that was pretty fascinating to see.
Yeah, not to go too far down the whole Breaking Bad universe rabbit hole with Better Call Saul, but I will say that watching Better Call Saul for me, one of the reasons I love that show in some ways even more than Breaking Bad was that it completely reframes the context of so many pivotal moments of Breaking Bad and characters. You see them in an entirely new light after having watched that second show, which is funny. Vince Gilligan has and Peter Gould, who co-created Better Call Saul, have said in interviews that at the time when they were writing Breaking Bad and somebody would come up with an idea that sounded good or sounded interesting but just didn't quite fit in the events of the moment, they would say, just add that to the list of stuff for the Better Call Saul spinoff.
That's hilarious.
And
Okay.
it was legitimately a joke. They meant it legitimately as a joke at the time, and yet it worked so well, it flowed so naturally that in the end, that is literally what ended up happening.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. That actually makes me happy inside for whatever weird reason. It warms my soul. Okay, well let's get into Walter, or should we talk about Heisenberg? I don't know.
Ooh, that's a good question.
We'll
Well,
see.
I wanted to ask you, so because this is, I think, the first time we've done a character on this show who comes from a TV series, where we're talking about not just a single film or book, but multiple episodes over multiple seasons worth of material. So I got a confession to make. I've seen the whole series. I did not have time to go back and watch every single episode in preparation for this show. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about what did you focus on, which episodes did you watch, and what differed or what stood out to you in comparison from what I saw.
I recently, probably within the last, I don't know how many months, I actually rewatched it for the second or third time with my daughter for the first time for her. She just saw it for the first time. Well, one of her favorite shows now. She likes this one. Band of Brothers is another one of her favorites.
I love
She
that
likes
show.
stuff with deep story and characters, and she's a wanting to be a writer, so it makes sense. So I've seen the whole thing recently. And I just saw El Camino a couple days ago, something like that. I figured I can knock that one out, and she wanted to watch it as well, so we can kind of get a little bit of a, I don't know, insight or reconnection to the character. But I haven't seen the Saul ones in a while, so I think for me, I'm basing this on my experience from watching the show two or three times now, and kind of having a good idea because I you know me. I did a little bit of research after googling things and trying to figure out why, what was it about Walter? What was going on with him? What are people saying versus my suspicions of where his head was at, why maybe the writing was a little bit off as far as I'm not sure if they talked to a clinician at some point to figure out how he would act. But then I through my own research, I figured out, with, I'm not going to tell you my diagnosis yet, but that it could lean the way I thought, even though it didn't match exactly what I think clinically it would be. So I'm going to say that I'm going with the main show, with a little sprinkle in of El Camino, only because of the diner scene and little bits and pieces where we see Walter transitioning or going back and forth from what he wants to be versus maybe who he is at his core.
I think to understand in part what drives Walter back and forth over the course of the show, we can't talk about that without, to some degree, talking about his relationship with Jesse Pinkman,
Absolutely.
because Jesse really is almost the human catalyst in some respects to maybe not catalyst, but he's the human he's the human element that drives so much of Walt's transformation. He's the person that really facilitates, maybe not intentionally and not always directly, but facilitates a lot of Walt being able to start to do the things to break bad, quote unquote, in the first place. I mean, without Jesse, there was no opening to become Heisenberg in the long run.
I agree. Jesse was almost a modeling mirror, and then Walter refined everything that he saw. He picked up the nuggets, did it better, did it right, and kind of ran with it. Where Jesse was trying to be, always trying to be something he wasn't because of his own traumas and insecurities and everything else. And unfortunately, he evolved to be um, the person he never really wanted to be. But then, I don't know why I wanted to say revolved, but but went out of it, and ended up finding some sort of gray area in his life, when he finally rode off into the sunset in Alaska.
His story ends with him sort of, in a way, I think, taking a little bit from each of the people, each of his mentors, if you will, not just Walt included, but very much so also from Mike and Gus and Saul. He sort of used a little bit of everything from what they each taught him and found the gray, the balance in between that. Whereas Walt was never playing for anybody's team but his own, throughout the whole series. And that you could argue in some sense that's part of what ends up being his undoing.
Exactly.
One thing that I was struck by was, despite the show being such a great in-depth character study and so many layers of transformation to witness and sink our teeth into, you do still have to really pry in between the cracks to learn about Walt's past and childhood in particular. There are clues and there are pieces there to be found, but they're not easily alluded to or referenced a whole lot throughout the show.
There's bits and pieces. That's what I thought they did a good job at, right? They really highlighted, like, his identity fragmentation, right? All just kind of broken up, trying to figure out who the hell he is. Who am I? Because he felt so small. All the repressed rage of feeling minimized and pushed away or pushed out. His wounded ego, with the idea that he was part of the mastermind of this mega $1 billion company, and got nothing out of it because of the relationship with that girl, and his own frustrations and ego, and I'm trying not to say the word because I don't want to go with the diagnosis yet, but his own issues, that push him to not want to, not conform, but at least step into it and be vulnerable and say, hey, what's going on here? And then it's all fueled by, and this is where I was trying to connect it to you. It's all fueled by, like, this long standing feelings of, like, powerlessness, right? Something that he's gone through his whole life. He's always made himself small, which is interesting to me, because then if you see his wife's character and his wife's sister's character, they are the complete opposite. So the attraction you can see is how the power differential goes, where the wife is looking for somebody that she can control a little bit more, unlike her sister. And her sister is looking for somebody that's a little bit, maybe more stoic and strong, just like her husband was. So good. It shows me that their parents, because we look at it generationally, were either overpowering or and I don't want to go too deep, but overpowering, or they had their own issues with needing validation, external validation, and seeking it through behaviors and communication styles and everything else. And now it kind of just flooded into their lives now. And then you could see the transition to where how they treated their son, right? how they treated Junior, or I'm still not calling him by his other name, but how they treated Junior, and and they gave him the autonomy that both of them have always wanted but never had. Did I go too deep? Was that too therapeutic?
Not on this show, man.
All right.
I think, yeah, I like what you pointed out about the duality and the yin yang aspect of Skylar and Marie, and that's very present. There's a great example of that is in the first season when Skylar holds that intervention for Walt when he's on the fence about whether or not to do chemotherapy for his lung cancer, and Marie actually defects from the rest of the group, who all are kind of giving Walt a hard time for not just jumping on this. And she says to him, "I think you should just do what you feel is right." And Skylar was like, What the heck, sister? You're supposed to be on my side, you know.
You messed it up. Yeah.
Yeah, so that I think, as you say, highlights the difference between them, and also why Marie would be in Walt's corner in that moment as well.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And you see it throughout the show, right? So we got him like feeling really emasculated, where his colleagues are making all the money, like I said earlier, and even at that dinner party, the way they're talking to him, and his he's obviously brilliant, and you're a teacher, and they just the verbiage and the way he makes himself smaller and the way he makes himself feel, and the chances he doesn't want to take on him, on himself. He doesn't believe in himself. He has almost kind of like an ego death. I don't know if that's the right term, but
That's it. I mean, it works because it does, I think, encapsulate, yeah, what you're describing.
and then his whole life was transactional, right? It was all about sacrifice. uh he didn't become great because everything was okay. Well, if I couldn't do it this way, then I'm gonna have to do it by creating a transactional relationship. I'll martyr myself and teach high school science, even though I can start a company or do whatever I want. I will always, everything is for this, everything is for that. But as you see throughout the series, you'll realize that the transaction is not really for the love and appreciation, but it's for to boost his own inferiority, right? To boost himself up, to make himself feel better about himself, to really hone in on I'm going to say Heisenberg, because he needed Heisenberg to finally be seen and respected, because he didn't feel like Walter was man enough to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. His pride,
Oh
there's
God.
that is at the core consistently of so much of what drives his bad decisions, and even the good decisions, any decision that furthers his transformation from Walt into Heisenberg. And his pride is already present, I think, even at the beginning of the story. It's there, but it is very much beneath the surface, because, as you say, that because of the ego death that he's kind of gone through, because of how much he's been emasculated, betrayed, at least in his mind, and disappointed and put down constantly over the course of the life he's already lived. I want to go back to what you said earlier when you said that he's a very smart, despite just being a high school teacher. He's a very smart person. That's the thing. Walt is brilliant.
He really is.
He's brilliant. Yeah, he's Nobel Prize levels of brilliant.
Super smart.
Is not just chemistry. He knows chemistry, but he knows mathematics. He knows mechanics. He knows, his,
right?
His mind is one of those computer minds that can just function on a level of intricacy and detail that allows him to make incredible calculations and problem solve at a speed and quality that many of us can barely dream of. And he was doing all of that. Yeah, and he was doing all of that for years before the events of the actual story begin. The whole thing with Gray Matter, with the company that he helped found,
right?
That then rears its head. It's never the focus of the story, but pops up here and there throughout all 5 seasons.
Oh yeah,
Which I thought there's like one episode per season where they remind you that gray matter is kind of at the back of Walt's at the back of Walt's consciousness, pushing his his super ego
for
on
sure.
in some little way. That was great. That was such a nice little touch.
And I'm going to argue that gray matter is just the the icing on the cake, or the last drop of an overflowing cup. I think this has been going on, and you can see that through his progression, and through his behaviors, and through his, I don't even know, I guess you can call it splitting, right, from Heisenberg to Walter. You can see it play out, because it really digs into what he starts to consider as weakness, which is, we know that vulnerability is a superpower, empathy and kindness, and he struggles with that, man. He does struggle with it, but he does, and man, it's so hard not to give the diagnosis with this guy, because it hits you in the face. It is, for me, anyways. We'll get to there at some point, but through that, he becomes more comfortable, as as Heisenberg, to be calculated, right? To be cold, to be brutal, even, and but those are all traits that he holds inside, because they're all ways in which he wishes he could have stood up for himself throughout his life, and he almost you'll see, you know certain scenes where he's trying to teach his son the same thing, not to get walked all over, not to be weak. But he also does a good job at knowing that maybe his frame of mind, what he should be teaching, because he doesn't go full blown with his son, which is fascinating to me, because that's more cognitive empathy than anything, right? It's a disconnect from the emotional part, but he's understanding these subtle, I don't know, nuances of the relationship, and the projection of the possible future. Um, Dude, so complex,
So
crazy.
complex, it's insane. Yeah, Walt's not without empathy, and he does have empathy, or he's still trying to put on at least a show of empathy, either because he thinks he should, or maybe because some part of his conscience is still still working properly, trying to keep that alive in him. At least in the first season, even if as the show progresses, it all but disappears. But it's very much there in the opening episodes, and we see that probably at its purest, ironically, when he kills for the first time.
Yeah, because he was theoretically gonna let the guy go, until he realized that this is just another person that's gonna try to hurt me, that's gonna do me wrong, even though I was gonna do right by him.
This person was going to betray me, just like gray matter,
Uh
just
huh.
like everybody and everything
Yeah.
else. It eventually it reinforced what he'd already had already been telling himself, but was still, at least with this person, trying to resist on some level.
Yeah, and that pushes me towards where I think he does have an emotional empathy. But I think he really functions on a higher level of cognitive empathy, right? Where he can understand people's, I don't remember the exact definition, like people's thoughts and feelings, but it's all through logic, right, and observation, and really putting the pieces together as a puzzle, like he does for everything, right? Where emotional empathy has more to do with, like, walking with the person, understanding their emotions, experiencing them with them. He doesn't seem like he does that. It feels more cognitive, with emotional kind of slipping in every once in a while, but I think his primary is cognitive empathy, which really pushes me towards, my idea of the diagnosis, and my idea of who he is, and what his traumas must have been. There was some points there had to have been some points in his life, and again, you know us, we want to know, well, what the heck happened to him,
We do.
where did it all start,
Right. Where does it begin?
uh Yeah, where's the root? But something must have happened where he realized being emotional or emotionally attached to anything is complete pain. So he decided to go to he just stood with suffering, and he stood with suffering so deeply, and he avoided so much and disconnect and disassociated so much that he pinned himself, he painted himself into a corner.
Right.
And now us the viewers got to see him walk out of that corner and really strut.
Can't point to anything for certain as much as I want to be able to, with the backstory. Darn it! But what what I can point to in terms of what certainly had an effect to the degree you're describing, three things come to mind. One, he does say at one point, maybe two, I can't remember, that his father died when he was only 6 years old. So that's a big one right there. Big one, parental figure, father, barely remember. We don't know. I don't think we learn, to what degree Walt remembers his father in any detail. But the fact that that he died at that age alone is a huge trauma, a
Yes.
huge wound that even for a person who had the perfect life after that wouldn't have easily gotten over.
Right. Which didn't seem like he did.
And then we also see that although Walt's mother is alive, she's not really in the picture. We never meet her, and when he does refer to her, it's always with this sort of dismissiveness, as if
Yep,
to
disdain.
yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah, God,
and
that person.
yeah. Well, you know how she is. There was a conversation that he had with his wife at one point where he was, his elaborate lies, which he's horrible at lying. This guy. But oh, I forgot her name. Anyways, his wife was. He was saying some weird elaborate lie of how, well, you know how she is, and this and that, and just a complete disconnect from her, and this internal frustration that this is how she's treated him, his whole life, and really taught him to be the character that he is, or the diagnosis or the person that he is. But you could see it, man. You could see the traits.
Those all, I think, contributed to where he was at the time, both at the time when he joined up to start Gray Matter, and continued to resonate and push a lot of that resentment that he felt later on after everything had kind of fallen apart for him, or so it seemed.
Yeah, it seems like when with Gray Matter, when they did the flashback and he's in that classroom or wherever the heck he was, and he was having this back and forth with his my assumption then girlfriend, who ended up being his coworker's wife.
Yeah, Gretchen is her name,
Gretchen,
and they
yeah.
were engaged at one point.
Oh, that's right. Okay, and so that was where you could see a version of him that I'm thinking, and this is based on a conversation. So who, I don't know, but and it could be my brain just trying to fit the puzzle pieces, right? Where he was trying to be somebody he wasn't. He was trying to be very connected and empathetic and kind and open-minded and kind of a go with the flow kind of guy, which I don't think he's ever been, man. And the reason I say that is because you see it in all the other behaviors and all the other scenarios in which he has an opportunity to be a go with the flow guy, but he doesn't lean into it. He doesn't lean into the general idea that we know, that we're, if you're vulnerable, empathetic, open, you have all the power. Nobody can hurt you. Nobody can do anything to you. People can act or say whatever they want. You just brush it off your shoulder, and stand your ground and say, okay, well, this is what I'm thinking, or this is what this is, and you will not be powerless. You will actually be powerful. But in that instance, in that conversation, that in that specific, I'm assuming it was at a college or wherever it was, you could see his vulnerability, but it was within a controlled environment. It's almost like he was not letting himself just be. He was being somebody else. And again, I could be overreading. I do that sometimes to try to make sense of where my brain's going, and I do it in session. But in session, they'll correct me in real time. with their behaviors or responses, or something else will come up, and I'll say, "Oh, okay, cool." And me, I kind of know your style, but I'll own it. I'll say, "Oh, that's interesting because I thought blah blah blah," and they'll say, "Oh no, it was this and that," and I love that because now it's twofold, right? Now I have the opportunity to show them that I make mistakes and that's okay, and it gives them the opportunity to know that they can make mistakes. They don't need to be perfect. Um, and it creates a bond to where now we're kind of riffing off each other and connecting and establishing even deeper relationships. So I just saw that with him. And again, maybe I'm overreading, man. You tell me.
Well, I think that he was trying to deliberately insert himself into a world, or into a social environment that he had very little practice with prior to that. And the social world in question is the one of the rich, powerful, and influential. In this case of big tech. And I think that he may have seen that as one of maybe two things, maybe both together. He probably saw it as both an escape for whatever he was dealing with in his own past with his parents that he was probably running from and hurting from. I think he saw it too as the way to prove that he wasn't just given these abilities, these smarts for nothing. That there was like a reason he got these, and this was his ticket, to use those to get to the good life. And so, whether the empathy and what you're describing, whether or not that was genuine, or whether or not that was him just trying to fake it till he made it for the sake of of that environment.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a coin toss. I think you could argue both, but the bottom line is that he was trying for that. He was doing that. He was working towards with very specific intention at that time, and then it all just evaporated practically overnight. But the interesting thing is that he's the one, more than anything else, he's the one that actually pulled out.
Yes.
You probably discovered this too, but Vince Gilligan confirmed in an interview that the reason this is never shown on screen, but the reason that Walt broke up with Gretchen after they were already engaged and sold his stock in Gray Matter for a paltry $5,000,
Pennies on the dollar. Yeah.
yeah, left it after he met her family and saw how rich they were. She comes from a very wealthy. She was already wealthy to begin with when she and him were working with Walt's fellows and getting that company started. And he saw how rich they were. He felt probably
inferior.
All the same inferiority
For sure.
that he'd been struggling with on a whole other level. And he believed in his eyes that he would always be living under their shadow, no matter how successful the company became.
I love that you said that so much, and here's why, because it reaffirms that I'm not crazy. That conversation just gave me that vibe that the actors knew exactly what the writers had known in the background, and that it felt like a backdoor, man. It felt like he was trying to be somebody. He had a mask on. He was trying to be somebody he wasn't, and it came across so clearly to me. And again, I always, you have to question yourself, right? You're not going to be always right. But I think there's something about taking a risk, diving, and seeing what happens. And it's okay. It's okay to be wrong, because then from the wrong answer you get the right answer. And this reaffirms, yeah, I knew it. I knew that there was something weird about that. There was just something odd about his demeanor, and now I know for sure he had a mask, and I'm going to say several masks on at that point, in order to find a backdoor into this life where he thought he would get validation and acceptance, and finally have some sort of stability and love that we all want at some point. Oh man, I love that. Okay, now I can sleep.
Yes, you can rest easy, good sir.
That's it.
Speaking of taking risks, this leads me to what I also wanted to run by you, which is that it's funny, we haven't even talked about this yet, the cancer diagnosis.
Oh well, I was gonna get there. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we've talked already about how why he's dealt with inferiority, why he's dealt with these almost sort of self-made betrayals,
Self sabotaging. Yeah,
self-sabotage. There you go.
yeah.
Thank you. Self-sabotaging, and where his ego death, where his emotional hurt, where his fear of empathy and vulnerability can be stemming from the cancer. When it comes, when he's diagnosed with lung cancer, at this point he's already been living the sort of the beat down life. He's when the series opens, he's really just living the lifestyle of a man resigned to his fate, that he just got, he got the shaft, and the world screwed him over. But you
Oh,
know
and it
what?
continues to. Yeah,
And it continues to every day. I mean, here he is teaching high school and working at a car wash, trying to support his family. His son has
MS.
MS. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
multiple sclerosis, and he's just not at all the man that he wanted to be. But whatever. Okay, he's doing this. Oh, and by the way, now you have inoperable lung cancer. You're probably going
yeah.
to die in a year or two.
And you
Oh
have
my god.
and you don't have no money. You have no money, even though you have $1 billion company you could have had a percentage of, and your insurance is going to cover it because the I'll say it anyways, but the United States doesn't have great insurance. But yeah, it's such a slap in the face all the way around. But did you notice what I notice is that, and I've worked with people that have end stage cancer, his perception or his the meaning he gave it, that's what I want to say. The meaning he gave it was not, oh no, how do I live in this life? Or, oh no, I can't believe it. Denial. I want to live. I want to survive. It was, now nobody's going to know my legacy, and they're going to think that I'm the piece of crap that everybody thinks I am, which is not the case. And how do I make sure that I leave some sort of legacy, so that everybody says that I am an incredible man?
Yes.
That's what. Okay,
Exactly.
okay, that's what
Exactly.
clicked for me, and I said, "Oh, that's fascinating."
It's not unheard of. I've worked with cancer patients too. It's certainly not unheard of for somebody diagnosed with a terminal illness to suddenly be spurred on to take risks that they might have never otherwise considered. And the reason for that, can vary, but at the core, it often is, this is all I've got for real. Like, life is shorter than me than it is for most, so I'm sure as hell gonna go out with a bang.
Yes,
But
but
in
yes,
Walt's
and
case, yes, and exactly in Walt's case, there's more to it than that. That's which is why I love that what you're illustrating.
yeah, because he was, it was black or white for him. He went complete ego. That was, and it wasn't, it was almost as if, oh yeah, I'm dying, the world's screwing me over again, no big deal. But I need to be the king. I need to figure out how, when I'm gone, people will speak my name for the rest of their lives, of how amazing I was, that I left them some money, I did this, I did that, so that he could feel that he wasn't a failure, as if he thought he was, which he was not. That's what stood out to me more, because what I've seen, the patterns that I've seen is, yes, they want to leave some sort of legacy. They want to be remembered. They want to feel that their life was, it had meaning. But there's also the part of, I don't want to die. I want to be here. I want to have a little bit more time. He didn't care, man. For him, it was I want more time so that I can be in people's mouths, and not to the extreme that it turned into. He never. I don't think he thought it would get to that.
No, I'll talk about that. I want to talk about that too in a moment. But that's actually a key point: is he didn't plan on becoming Heisenberg, at least in the sense that he is by the end of the show when he's first diagnosed.
It was 176,000 something 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 something. I forgot the exact number. That was the goal. That was the goal, to keep them steady.
Right. He had a number. That's right. 750
Oh, it was
thousand.
a 700. I don't know. There
I can't
was it
remember,
was
but it
it
was,
was some specific number.
yeah, it was less than a million. I remember that much. It was less than a million. And here's kind of the open question. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, but we know by the end of the show, we know that really what he is doing is entirely for himself. It's entirely for a legacy that acknowledges and glorifies nobody other than him, Walt Heisenberg. At the beginning, though, he claims that's not why he's doing it. How much of that, I'm wondering, how much of that can we say was genuine versus how much of that was him just fooling himself and acting out to try to convince other people that he wasn't fooling himself?
I love that you said that, because that's what I think. I think he was trying to own his mask. He was trying to own the character that he created for himself, that he thought people needed to see, so that he wouldn't feel like a monster. He wouldn't feel disconnected from the world, as he has been for most of his life, is my assumption. And I think you see the mask. You know, he shines it, takes it off, polishes it, puts it away at night, and everything else. And I would argue, uh, I would argue that once he started cooking for Tuco, um, that changed. I think that's when he took off that mask and realized, wait, I don't have to pretend to be this father that's going to save his family and everything. I can save my family and be the boss. I can have total control. I can finally feel free. I can finally feel like I am not under anybody's thumb. I'll go in there and I'll go blow up his whole building, and he won't do nothing. He won't do nothing because I'm gonna do which blows up in his face later. He realizes, oh wait, no, this guy's kind of off, and he does not care about you at all. He just wants some money, and he knows you got good product. But that would be my argument, man. Is that he almost went, and I use masks a lot for the listeners, because for me, masks is almost like, I equate it to like those movies, those old shows or whatever, where people go to these big fancy parties and they wear these masks to cover their faces. So I use masks in the idea that you put on a mask to be, I don't know, the employee. You put on a mask to be the father. You put on the mask to be the boyfriend, the husband, the wife, whatever. And eventually you get a stack of masks that are so high that you lose sight of who you really even are. Um, I think he lost sight of who he was probably around 6 years old, man, something very young. Because his internal compass is so off, that it's associated to me anyways with almost kind of like a child, to where everything's so black or white. And you see that with death and killing and letting the Jesse's girlfriend die, which you can argue, well, she was going to blow up the whole thing if he let her live. And anyways, we can go back and forth and play devil's advocate, but you can see how black or white his thought process was, like a child. So I make the association that his masks, or his development of several masks, started really really young. And so now with Tuco, it gave him the opportunity to finally don, the gold plated, bulletproof, I don't know, the masks of all, the mask of all masks, and be able to move forward. And he evolved that one as well. I don't know, put rhinestones on and diamond encrusted, and all that stuff as he went on.
He did. Oh, I think you're really onto something with this, man, because yeah, it's with Tuco that we see him for the first time don the now signature hat and sunglasses of Heisenberg. That's the first time it appears in the show. So yeah, I mean, he is literally wearing that mask, such as it is, at that point, to start to represent that this is not just all in my head. I'm really embracing this character, this mask, this Heisenberg, beyond just these so-called benevolent motivations that I was originally doing all this for.
For sure. Which was, I still say it was not a lie, man. I wouldn't call it a lie. But it was it was a transactional relationship, and that's what he's used to. That's what his life has been.
Back to what you were saying earlier, when he's told that he's going to die, as you say, he barely reacts to it. It's neither oh no, or oh well, better make the most of this. It's neither one. It's just indifference almost.
Yes.
And we actually, and we can sort of clue into why that is as the show goes on. Really what it is that death is his get out of jail free card for the repercussions and the long-term hurt that or blowback that what he decides to do with going into the meth business could potentially cause in terms of not his relationship with his family so much as the legacy, the his image of how his family will perceive him when he's gone. It's this is what's so crazy to me. It's like I'll try to word it as best I can. His thinking, I think, is going something along the lines of I'm cooking meth, which is viewed by our society as illegal and immoral and corrupt, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm doing it to look after my family and to make sure that they're taken care of, but also because once I'm dead, I don't have to worry about how other people are going to view or judge me for this. It's
And I'll be
basic.
the hero.
I'll be the hero. I'll be the hero to my family who saved their financial and material lives. And so all of this ethical stuff is just dust in the wind. I don't got to worry about any of this because once the cancer finishes me, I'm out, baby. We're good. This is great stuff, and that's why I think Walt is so hesitant to undergo the chemotherapy when everybody
Ah,
except Marie, of course, is urging him to do that because he doesn't want to risk prolonging unnecessarily the end of the line for him to walk off into that golden sunset, having left behind this magnificent accomplishment in his final days.
that's a great observation. You're right.
And then, as we see, he does go through the chemo and it's really successful. It buys him, another year or two. And that is actually where the turning point starts to happen, where things fall apart with his family
Yes.
as a result. So this also ties into what you were saying earlier. He was not planning on living through the second year of the show.
No.
It
No.
was he was supposed to be gone by then.
Yeah. It was supposed to be over, and he was going to be the hero, and they would speak his name for all eternity as the great father, Father White. I don't know, however you want to look at it. But yeah, there's this weird. He was given too much of an opportunity to really hone in on becoming this source of power that he's always wanted to be or have. And then he ran with it, but he didn't understand it. He didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know how to be that person because that wasn't him either. See, that's the hardest part, and I think that's what the writer did so well is that he didn't know how to be that. He didn't know how to be the other fake version of himself. And I'm going to use fake really lightly because the reality is that he was somewhere of a mosh podge of it all. And you see it at the very end, man. You finally see where he's still disconnected. He's still not fully there. And of course, he never really worked with either one of us, so he was never going to get there.
Yeah.
He did start to use, um, again, cognitive empathy is what I'm going to call it, or I think that's the actual term. But this idea that what I'm doing is wrong. It's hurting too many people, and so I need to make this right. I need to make sure that my loved ones are okay. Too many people have died. Too much chaos has happened, and it's all because of my own ego. And he even shoots the only remaining knowledge of where millions, tens of millions of dollars is probably buried somewhere. Who knows? They never found that, or at least I don't know. Maybe they'll have a spinoff from a spinoff from a spinoff to tell us where that money went. But he shoots the guy at the end. It says, you're not going to kill me because I know exactly where your money is, and he shoots him anyways because I don't care. But it was not till that episode, let's just say, that he started to realize that these masks that I've been donning have done more harm than good for me. And then we get to see um, what would I call him? Waltenberg, you know, and
Waltenberg,
yeah,
yes, yeah.
where it's the guy that actually does care about his family, but really loves the power, and he goes off, rides off into the sunset on his own terms, and I think there's something oddly poetic about that.
Yeah. So many thoughts and feelings just about what you just said. That's really poignant that he does become kind of a fusion of the two. And it's at the very end that he reaches what you could call some kind of a balance between what has otherwise been just these many masks all duking it out for the spotlight throughout the rest of the show. Um, I want to first go back to what you were talking about when you were saying how he didn't really know how to be Heisenberg and how to be this person in the business, and that's really, I think, important to point out as well, um, and and to tie into what I was saying too. At this point, because he's had the chemo and he's now living on time that he didn't anticipate or really want to have, and he's struggling with this persona. That's when, as I said, things with his family start to fall apart. But another thing going on that we got to remember is that even though this is something that he chose, and even though he's going to such great lengths to conceal the way that he is changing and the way that all of this is affecting him, the danger and trauma of the meth business are real and affecting him
Insane. Oh, for
at an
sure.
unbelievable level, even if he pretends that they aren't, or gets really good at hiding them, which, sometimes he can sort of hide it, but a lot of the time he's not that great at hiding it.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
and really his time working for Gus and working under, right under the thumb of Albuquerque's meth kingpin. I mean, that is where we really see him biting off more than he can chew. And it really is a hair's breadth several times that Walt comes through alive. We see him, in some ways, we see Walt at his most physically vulnerable, in his most mortal state, in those middle seasons 3 and 4, I would say, when he's closely involved with Gus and everything going on with there, because that's, he's, as you say, he's floundering. He doesn't know what he's doing, and his pride versus his self-preservation versus his trying to save what is quickly deteriorating with the goodwill and image his family holds of him. All of that is just this chaotic whirlwind, and it sometimes, even arguably blinds him to how close he is to not a cancer death, but a very much more painful and
Oh,
grisly death,
vicious.
vicious
Yeah,
death from the
vicious
hands
death.
of Gus and his men,
Or Mike, yeah,
or
and
Mike.
yeah, I think it would have been Mike, but I agree. And I think the I'm not going to say it was needless, because here's the problem or the point. Gus knew about his brother-in-law. Gus knew that there was issues. Gus knew about Jesse's just continued processing of his own traumas, and that's a whole nother story. All the self-sabotage and everything else that's going on with that kid. But for me, it was, again, this person in power, this person with money, this person with a name for himself. I mean, he could walk into a police station and everybody loved him, everybody knew him. Is you going to tell me what to do? No, no. You're not going to be another person to hold your thumb on me. And so he created or caused his own friction, um, out of a necessity to not be minimized again. And I can argue either way. This idea that well, Gus would have probably killed him at some point anyways, or he would have enslaved him like they wanted to do to Jesse in Mexico, or who knows. At this point, who cares? But really, it was, you could see how Gus's behaviors were making him feel small, at least in his own head, partially,
Oh yeah,
and and
oh yeah.
and that triggered him to want to fight and push back, because again, he doesn't like to be minimized, because that's his trauma, man. His trauma is to feel othered, to feel less than, and so he goes with it. Okay, so So with all this crazy information, unless we could we could probably dig for the next 3 hours because there's just so much good stuff.
Oh, so much.
What are you thinking about diagnosis, or you got something else you want to kind of touch on?
Yeah,
they're good.
yeah, they're good. I agree. You know, we could talk about this all day and probably still not get
Oh my
anywhere
God,
near
so much stuff.
covering the ground. I'll round off with this final point, and then let's definitely do diagnosis. I think his pride is his ultimate shield against the trauma of inferiority that you're describing there, because his pride is what is tends to be behind why things often escalate, especially with Gus. Walt is jealous of Gus. He's so jealous. Gus is everything already that Walt wants to be, and the fact that Gus is subtly and not so subtly just crunching Walter under his boot heel, especially in season 4, it just sets him off the deep end, and his pride. That's when his pride just kicks into full. IDGAF. It's war, and we end up with such an explosive
no
season 4 finale,
or full pun intended. Yeah,
audience. So what do you think? You decide.
I agree. But I think his pride was his cancer. It was another version of his cancer. It was another disease, man. Yeah, and that goes with, I guess I can start with this idea that it reinforces his grandiose sense of importance. It increases his preoccupation with fantasy of success and power. It reinforces how he believes he's unique, should be associated with higher status people, and his sense of entitlement, that he deserves to be on this pedestal, and that nobody else can cook like me, and even when Jesse does,
it's still not as good.
It's not as good. No. His lack of empathy, and this is where I struggled, man, because the empathy, because he does have cognitive empathy, and you see leaks in of emotional empathy, his envious beliefs of others, or their how they're envious of him, and his arrogant behaviors, right, which all kind of justify narcissistic personality disorder, and that's what I kind of went with. And I wrote down little things that he said, like, I'm the one who knocks. You know what I mean? I'm the one who
I am
shows
the
up.
danger.
Yeah. He talks about people with lesser minds. Just the arrogance of his incredibleness, which the guy's incredible. He's a genius. He's brilliant. Yeah, so I can give him that. But still, he assumes moral superiority. He can break laws because it's okay. He's doing it for the right reasons. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, as he says to Jesse in the final season, he's in the empire business. He wants to be the supreme ruler, and for everybody to know that he is the supreme ruler, and that he alone worked his way up to become the supreme ruler, and he's brilliant, which is why he did it, and that he deserves to continue to be supreme ruler for as long as he feels like it, because he is brilliant. The analogy I came up with regarding his ego by the end of the series is Walter is the sort of person who would rather everybody, including himself, starve than risk not taking credit for being the one who grew all the food.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. Because you see it, man. You see it throughout. He's like lecturing cartel members. He's like threatening, everybody and anybody with like no remorse. He's letting Jesse's, what was her name? Jane, which is, such a creative name there, guys, writers. Jane die so he can manipulate Jesse with it later on. And kind of save his own butt. I mean, she was kind of spiraling, and she did show that she was going to end up destroying his house if he didn't continue. It wasn't going to be one payment. I promise you that. That was going to continue going on. So, yeah, I think that is where, and again, it was the empathy, the only part that didn't 110% click for me. But if I lean towards his cognitive empathy and a little bit and fragments of emotional empathy, then I can make it stick. I think that's the turning point for me. I also possibly antisocial personality disorder, but he didn't meet all the criteria. Unspecified trauma, stressor related disorders, that's a possibility. Persistent complex grief, substance use disorder rule out, but I never saw him using drugs. He did drink a lot, but wasn't it? It didn't impair his life. He wasn't, he couldn't not get up and functional. A couple times he would be really hungover, but nothing major.
Right. He never used alcohol as self-medicating for his to
No.
deal with his problems.
So that's where I'm at. What are you thinking?
Pretty much the same as you. Almost diagnosis for diagnosis. I said
Love it.
narcissistic personality disorder. I think that's the big one. That's that, or at least the most prominent. We see that on display the most over the course of the series. His notions of grandiosity, his desire to be to be front and center, to be right, to refuse to accept other interpretations, or to be very dismissive or even abusive and manipulative, especially when people question his capabilities. All of that is, very, very in keeping. I think he did, for me, and again, a lot of different ways to look at this. He did meet the criteria for antisocial personality disorder, as I read it, but it was just within the margins for me. I feel like it counts probably more in season 5, but on the whole, and certainly if we're coming into the picture with this, at the end after all that's gone down, because it really isn't until Ozymandias, until the arguably the most talked about episode in the show, that I think his empathy starts to resurface a little bit, because
It still feels cognitive though, even at that point, to me anyway.
I mean, as we said, different interpretations. I
Yeah,
think that
for sure.
he definitely experienced grief and compassion when Hank died.
Let me challenge you, man. Let me
Okay,
challenge you.
yeah,
But
do it.
but did he feel it because of what they were going to think about him, or did he feel it because of what happened?
I think both. I think it's
Okay.
possible it may have been
Yeah,
both. I
I
think,
I could argue that
yeah,
for sure. I could see that.
I mean, it's such an in the moment experience, that we just have a couple of seconds to take in, the degree of what is passing through his heart and mind at that time. I don't know if there's a way to effective
No,
to
not in that moment. No way.
I think it was both, because he never intended for Hank to die. I think that's pretty clear. He was willing to manipulate Hank like anybody else to make sure that he
Well, he was going
got
to die
his
in
way.
prison. He was going to die. Yeah, he was. He was like, whatever. You'll get your thing. My family will get their money, and everybody will know me, and I'm the king. But I, I, the antisocial personality disorder. Two pieces got me. One, the old school, by the book, graduate school DSM reading crap that he we don't know his childhood, so there was no, we don't know if he had any, because you have to have a conduct disorder as a child in order to get the diagnosis for antisocial personality disorder. um so we have no idea, right? So but throwing that away, because my assumption is that there was some conduct disorder, there was something as a kid, because remember, my assumption is that this started really young, man. This is not brand new. But I think that there was a lot of his behaviors that were kind of like a malignant. It came from the narcissistic. It was adapted from his narcissistic personality. I think that crossover made it feel like a possibility. But that's why I ran from the antisocial. I was like, no, it's not a good enough fit. It's almost like, is somebody depressed because they're anxious, or is somebody anxious because they're depressed? Chicken or the egg. It's hard to really hone in on it, but I think the whatever is affecting them the most in their lives is going to be the way I always lean anyway. So somebody comes to, oh, I'm so depressed, and then they, all they tell me is all these things of how they can't sleep because they're anxious, how they can't do that, and they can't go over there, they can't do this. So it's anxiety, or I'm so anxious, and blah, blah, and then my dog died, and then this, and then now I haven't, it's hard for me to get out of bed, and what's the use? And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's depression stemming, feeding your anxiety. So that's my perception. That's why I didn't go with the antisocial.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does. Yeah, I can follow that, and I agree. I think that is just as apt an approach to take on that, especially with the childhood aspect. When you add that into the mix, and then I think too, and then just to round off, like you said too, definitely trauma underneath that.
For sure. And grief and loss. And...
yeah, yet again, shaking my fist that I can't give complex PTSD as an official label here. But
I'm so glad we couldn't. I'm really so glad we couldn't. It's always complex, it's always PTSD in some form. I'm so glad we couldn't do it this time. What about treatment, man? What are you doing?
I was thinking, like, just in terms of even just meeting, I'm wondering, like, what the context will be, because I'm assuming I'm seeing him probably under a court order, just because based on everything
I love that perception.
Based on everything that we've talked about him, it was hard for me to envision him voluntarily coming to therapy. At least to address the real issues. I could see him coming to therapy to make a show of addressing what's going on, or like to try to save face, for lack of a better phrase.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something else, because my brain went a different direction. I thought that he would want to come in only to prove to me and to himself that he doesn't need me, that he's smarter than me, that I'm a quack, and that I have no idea what he's talking about, and that everybody, his wife and his, everybody telling him he's crazy. For him to come in and prove to everybody that they're all full of crap.
All of that is still on the table. Oh yeah, he's going to do that.
Okay,
no question.
Okay.
But I actually was thinking even farther. I was thinking he wouldn't even feel the need unless he knew about us, unless he knew about like our practice and like saw us as like
a challenge.
Yeah, relevant enough entity that it could potentially challenge, that he needed to like put us in our place before it got started, kind of a thing. I don't think, I can't even see him bothering to call unless a court order is unless he's like been captured and then the judge is ordering him into court mandated treatment.
Okay, so is that our stuff or his stuff or both? And the reason, and let me explain my thought process. Is it our stuff in the sense of, because my first thought is, without the court order, because my assumption is he went to jail, he'd be dying, and he's like whatever. Or I guess, but it was more of a challenge. He wants another challenge. He wants another fight. He wants another front to be able to be the smartest guy in the room, to be able to prove that there's nothing wrong with him. And now it goes to my question: is that his stuff or mine? I think it's both. I think it's my own internal want for a fight, for a struggle, for a back and forth, not to be right, but really to be able to prove or sit with somebody like that. And for them to see that there's another side to it, that there's a third side, a side that they're not even seeing, that their filter system is blocking out, and they're going to do with whatever they want with it. I don't see, unless that's long term work, man. I don't see quick results, but we can definitely plant some seeds. That's what I thought. And then his obviously is to fight and prove that there's nothing wrong with him.
Either scenario, I think, I like how you broke it down. Either scenario for him coming into session, I think is feasible. And I guess that could just be like, our respective universes that we're both working with him. It's one and the same. But regardless of the reasons for why he comes into therapy to work with us, I think that, following following the intake, it follows the same that same setup both times. I think his narcissism is going to be probably the most immediate barrier, and seeing us as another challenge, absolutely. And I remember I watched an interview once with a psychologist who made his career was working with narcissists. Just that was who he saw.
That
Um,
must be tough work.
I can only imagine. And he said what I thought was interesting. He said that the approach that he kind of cultivated over the time spent in this career was, it wasn't about coming up with good arguments or trading blows with them. It was really just about remaining focused, so you could help them remain focused, and just remaining steadfast in your own opinions, and learning to ignore their responses, because their response was always going to be to dismiss, invalidate,
Of
challenge,
course.
deflect, and you don't even engage with that, because then it just becomes headbutting. You don't get drawn into the back and forth debate with a narcissist. You remain calm,
Don't take the bait, man.
balanced. You don't take the bait. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that's their pattern, right? They're used to the what I call the push pull. They're going to push me so that I can pull them back in. Number one, so they can boost their ego, or number two, so they can feel heard and seen. It's almost how they've taught themselves to feel accepted. If you fight with them, if you give them, you take the bait, then you care. In a dysfunctional way, but you still care.
Right. You're reinforcing them in
There you go.
by doing
Yeah.
that. So yeah, with Walt, wouldn't want to do that,
No.
and at the same time, still do what we can to meet him where he's at, narcissism and all. I don't know if he would respond to this, or how how open he'd be, but starting with, tell me about your work, tell me about Heisenberg, walk us through your process, tell me about cooking meth, tell me about distribution, tell me about the chain of command, the rules of the game, and then go very subtly but still gradually into a little more personal by asking questions like, and so what did you do differently? What allowed you to succeed where people like Tuco or Crazy Eight never quite made? What how did you learn from your mistakes? So things like that, just starting to break down. I mean, at the very least, I think that having him convey in his own words his narrative could be a good foundation point, because it gives it opens the door for potentially greater perspective. It creates, I think, a larger probability of what you were talking about, which is hopefully helping him to at least become aware of that third side, regardless of whatever he comes with. So that would, I take very much a storytelling approach with a lot of my clients. I like helping them being able to sort of unpack in the process and process another pun, the emotions of their story as they are gradually kind of piecing it together, sometimes in order, sometimes out of order, and a lot of the healing and empathy comes naturally throughout that process. With Walter, because of his defenses and his narcissism and his and who he is and what he wants, and probably what he sees the nature of our therapeutic relationship as, a lot of that isn't going to be possible. But I still think that creating the space for him to get an understanding of his own narrative and a fuller context could still open the door to that potential down the line, regardless of what he then chooses to do with it.
I love it. I think we're pretty much on the same page. I think maybe little bits of changes, but honestly, it's about we're neck and neck is in the direction we want to go in. I think I need to sit in a more of a moral ambiguity. I can't choose a side. I got to be open to, and we never do anyways, and we try to meet them where they are, and there's no right or wrong, there just is. So I think I would start with like confronting his moral injuries, right? The narcissistic defense of why he's doing this and where he's at, and where he is, exploring his traumas, like you said. The guy that actually really loves chemistry, and why. because it was a means to an end, right? It was a way for him to feel empowered and have control and understand the world or the universe, almost kind of like a, oh, that's kind of mean, huh? It's okay. A Sheldon Cooper, that he knows everything and he feels above everybody else because of the knowledge that he's consumed or done, his family and everything else, and then some grief work, uh, redefining his legacy and really what that means, and what's happening. A lot of parts work, man. I think that's going to be the biggest part. Is exactly what you said earlier. Walter and Heisenberg, because they're one and the same, um, but he treats them like they're different. What were you going to
Mhm.
say?
I was going to say, well, we were talking earlier about wearing the putting on the mask and how that's physically represented by the glasses and the hat. But really, what I think a lot of people miss is that in the final season, those go away. He never wears the sunglasses
Till the last episode.
till the last episode. But a lot of the time throughout the fifth season, he wears the hat a couple of times, but he doesn't really. It's nowhere. It's with nowhere near the regularity or the adherence that he had a previous season, which I think is an indicator of how much more fused and overlapping the two personas had become in him.
I agree, and or he's starting to really understand or dip his leg instead of his toe into the gray, right? That he's starting to come back to center, to find himself. And I think that's the hardest part, is because the viewer and most people without the training that we have, will think, no, if he's coming back to self, then it's going to be this extreme other shift where has this empathy, he understands the world, blah blah blah. But that's not the reality. His self, it has never been matured. It's never been grown. It's never really been developed. And that's why I say that this is so young. His traumas. That's why I say about 6, because between 5 and 8 or something, we realize we're not the center of the universe, and that kids are mean and they're not going to want to play with us because of this that, and the other. Our mom and dad are uh, adults. They're people. They're not superheroes. They have flaws and whatnot. But we internalize it all. It's all our fault in some way. I wasn't good enough kid. I wore the wrong, I don't know, shoes. I didn't have the right backpack, and that's why people hate me. And whatever. And so that's why I feel like it's so young. So his center is still skewed. It's still off, man. But I think that what you're touching on is what I saw too, is that was his coming back to center. It was as close to center of whatever his center is, that we were going to get without him actually sitting down with us. And that's going to be our work, is not, again, moral ambiguity. I'm not going to try to convince him everything he did was wrong. It just is. And whatever. I can validate that he did some of it, because he had to or whatever. But we're gonna go through the process of trying to understand it all, and why he feels that X, Y, and Z was correct, and what is it, this need for this legacy, when the legacy, you know uh that's a weird thing to say, but however many seasons ago, was done. He could have been done. He could have walked away, but he doesn't live in seasons, right? But he didn't, for a reason. For a reason, he doubled down. He went into it because of the power, the control, and how it boosted his self-worth, and ultimately his self-esteem, or I guess vice versa, his self-esteem and then ultimately his self-worth.
Yeah,
uh,
that's really
that's
well
what I'm
said.
thinking.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think that's all. I think that's all to the point. So last question: what do you think about long-term prognosis? What's your take on that?
uh I don't know. I think he's smart enough to understand it, and I think he's going to twist it to fit his norm. I think he's going to use it like, what we saw in the end of last season, the very last episode, in that same manner. He's not going to change. He's not going to completely abandon his own patterns. And But I think he's going to realize that he's never really felt powerful. And he's gonna start. That's gonna start cracking at how this power really isn't him. Oh, I'm finally feeling my own inner strength. No, dude, you're finally feeling what it would feel like not to be scared anymore, not to feel so vulnerable. But you got to figure out the vulnerability is actually your power. But he's not going to get there anytime soon.
Yeah.
He's going to understand how he's mistook, I don't know, control for healing, and legacy for love, man. I think that those are the ultimate goals. But that sounds so horrible, right? But I just don't think he'll get there. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll get there.
Yeah, same. I wrote uncertain. That was literally what I wrote out in my notes. Just
what,
uncertain.
Oh, you held my feet to the fire, man, and you had one word. All right. Oh,
yeah. I think that he's made so many bad decisions, and he's gotten, if not skilled, then really comfortable with lying, and undoing all of that completely probably isn't possible.
he sucks at lying. He's never been good at it. He's horrible at lying. He's bad at drug dealing. He's bad at lying. He's horrible. He is not a bad guy. Or no, let me change I put emphasis on the wrong syllable. He's not a bad guy. He's just not he has not been raised or has experienced this to be Gus. He's not Gus, and he never will be. He'll continue to stumble over his own feet. He'll continue to choose his narcissist ego over the business and what needs to be done, and he'll completely will always shoot himself in the foot.
I'm reminded of that one of my favorite lines that Saul has at one point in season, I think it's season 2, maybe 3. It's like right after all the crazy stuff that goes down with Tuco, and they're sort of brainstorming. Jesse and Walter are brainstorming with Saul, and Saul at one point just kind of holds up his hand and says, "Okay, I'm just going to say this to you guys as plain as I can. You two suck at meth peddling."
Yeah. Yeah, that was. I mean, it was the truth.
It was the truth.
It was the truth. Yeah.
This is a good reminder to to us and to people listening, how it's not really, it's in fact it's never the therapist's job to change their clients. That's not why we're here. We don't exist to transform back or repair what has been broken. And with people like Walter, even if you want to argue that they possess the capacity still to change or to come back or embrace that vulnerability, whether or not they do is not what we're meeting with them for.
No, we are here to be um, somebody that helps you hold the pain that you've been avoiding, because you've been sitting with suffering for most of your life, or for a good bit of time, longer than you think, listener, way longer than you think. You think it just hit you, but it's been there for a very long time, and you're finally being your prefrontal cortex is finally kicking in to say, wait a minute, this isn't right. And so we're here to hold that for you, and we're here to help you pull out, shine, clean up, fortify, strengthen all the tools that you already have within you. We're not here to fix anybody, and when I used to work with kids, that was always the here, fix him, fix her, fix them. But no, man, it's not about fixing. It's about helping them find the tools. And with kids, if you're a parent or a kid listening, it's uh, yeah, I'll say it out loud. It's not even you. It's your parents, man. It's the need for all of you as a unit to come together to figure out where the generational traumas have come from, where the way you see the world has been fed to you, and how it's incongruent. And if we're young and don't understand that just means it doesn't match, it doesn't click, it's not right. And so we got to figure out where it's not right to fit your life now, where you are, versus, and this the research is showing, I think it's like 3 or 4 generations back, how it is for you now versus how it is or was for your ancestors hundreds of years before you, because you're carrying that trauma as well.
Exactly. Daniel, thanks as always so much for coming on the show with me. This is a great episode.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. I love working with you, and I love Walter. I think this is such an incredibly well-written program. If you guys haven't seen it, you're just listening to this,
check it out. Go watch it.
Check it out. It's amazing. It's a slow burn, but if you like storytelling and you like depth of character, then I think it'll be for you. And if you're young, check with your parents first.
Yes, always get parents' permission. And then once you've seen Breaking Bad, definitely go watch Better Call Saul after that. We'll probably be doing at least another couple episodes for the rest of the cast, because boy, it's a rich group of people in that universe.